Hi, okay, so now we're on Unit 9, where we are doing the codes for exam statistics, and we have around 9 activities. So, let's start. So, first, just click submit. Okay, now what we have to do is to print out the list of the grades one element at a time. So, this is what I did. So, because this is the list of the grades, and we have to print them out one grade in each line. So define a function called print underscore grades with the argument list is grades. Then inside the function, so it has to be indented, we have to iterate through the grades and print each item on its own line. So after the function, we have to call the print underscore grades with grades as the parameter. So here we first create an empty list and I assigned it to S. Then for every item in grades, you have to append it to this empty list in S and then print it right away. And then so that it will look back to the next item in the list grades, append it to S and then print it right away. So it's being printed one line at a time. And you call it, and there you go. Next is, so for a review, the next step is to create our grade statistics program involving the computing the average of the grades. So we're just going to submit and we'll move on to the next. So first we get the total sum of the scores. So first is we define a function called grades underscore sum, and it takes in the list scores. And then we are going to compute the sum of the scores. So what I did is to create total and set its value into 0. Now, so for every n in scores, for every score, it will have the total is equals to the total which is currently at 0 plus that score, and then print it. And then return print it, and then we go to the next score as it loops. So it will now add all the scores, and then we're going to print the total and then return it. And then the last is to call the newly created grades underscore sum function, and this is the result. Okay, next is how are we going to compute the average. So we are going to define a function grades underscore average, taking in the grades list, and then below that we have to call the grades underscore sum function earlier, the one that we created earlier, then call in grades. And then so in getting the average, all we have to do is to get the total sum of the grades from the result of the function grade sum, and then divide it by the number of grades, and then we have to divide that sum by using the float, and then len, and then grades. And then you have to print the average and return average, and then finally call the newly created grades underscore average function. So submit, and there you go. The average is 80.42. Next is now we are going to review, and we're going to use the average for computing variance. So let's go to the next section. So for computing the variance and how to do that in Python, we're going to do on line 18. Okay, so let's just move to line 18. Okay, so I have to define a new function called grades underscore variance, and it accepts one argument, still it's grades. Then we create a variable variance and we set it to 0 right here. Now, and for every item for every grade in grades, we're going to compute for the variance, which is the grades average minus that grade minus a single grade, and then get the square of that, the result of that, the difference, get it the square, and then add it to variance. And you have to look back, and then again the total grades average less the next grade, so for that case the second grade, and then the difference of that we're going to get it square, so multiply it by itself, and then it goes on, and then it will return the value of variance. And then once we got all the differences and it's squared, they're now all under variance, and then we have to divide it by the total number of grades. Not the total grades, not the sum, but the total number of grades in the list. And then we are going to print the grades underscore variance. And it's 334.07. So next is now the standard deviation. And we can only do this if we already have the sum, the grade, the average, and the variance. So variance comes first before we can do the standard deviation. So now we have to define a function called grades underscore and the standard deviation. And it's taking the argument of variance, not the grades this time, but variance. So we are going to return the value of the variance and get the square root. And how we do that is we raise it to the exponent of 1/2 or 0.5. And then variance will now become is equals to, call the function again of grades underscore variance. And then now we're going to print the grade standard deviation. Submit, and there we go. And now, since we already have the grades, the sum, the average, the variance, and the standard deviation, now we have to print out everything and then call each function, and there you go. So these are the grades, and then we have the sum, and then the average, and then the variance, and then the standard deviation. Next. And we are done. So we are now moving on to unit number 10 for the advanced topics of Python, and that will come on the next video.